From EPAWA Weather Consulting, headquartered in Worth Whitehall, Pennsylvania, this is Weather Weeklies, an informative video of the ins and outs of weather that affect you most in the EPAWA coverage area. The thoughts and opinions expressed in this video are those of the forecaster alone and may not reflect those of the staff of EPAWA Weather Consulting LLC as a whole, nor its constituents. Now, without further ado, here is meteorologist Bobby Martrich with Weather Weeklies.
Good Sunday morning to you. A couple weeks off here for the holidays, and now we're back into the normal Weather Weeklies Sunday morning video cycle, which discusses the long range, looking at some threats down short-term and long-term that are wintry in nature. This will go throughout the entirety of the winter season. It's probably a good thing I didn't do it each of the last 2 weeks. There really wasn't too much to talk about. We turned milder, of course, to begin the month of January, and we're still kind of mild now, even though it's not, in the 50s and 60s, it's still technically slightly above average with this modified Pacific air mass, which I'll talk about here in the video. We're going to take a look at a couple threats this week and then what we have in the pipeline down the road. And as far as the overall pattern, this is the long range from what we did on Friday. I need to point something out here because, I'm getting a lot of, from week to week. When snow doesn't materialize, you get the snow lovers wanting to blame somebody, wanting to vent their frustrations. I see it all the time in social media. I don't control it, all right? And they're like, well, you had the second half of January slightly below average, and now it's not. And it isn't. It is not below average now. As a matter of fact, it's the complete opposite. When we were forecasting that and putting in the long range or the Weather Weeklies videos, it's in previous weeks. This goes week to week. There's two things with this. One, if I did this, if this is going to be something I could put out in the beginning of a month, like the beginning of December, forecasting ahead for the rest of December and part of January, the next 5 to 6 weeks like we do, and it wasn't going to change, I could do it once. I wouldn't have to do it every single week. There'd be no point because it'd be the same thing, right? Well, that's not how it works. Weather changes, things move around, right? And one thing that changes upstream will change things downstream. That's true with storms. That's true with patterns overall. Second thing here, if you look in the right side of the chart here, it has a confidence level, okay? So we're forecasting ahead to February. I have it starting off near to slightly below average the first week of the month and then slightly below average both weeks 2 and 3. But look at the confidence in that. Moderately low, low, very low. That's not really boding well for a lot of confidence because it's kind of murky when you get out in this range. Admittedly, that's what it is. So long range is probability based. It is not deterministic. It is not something that we can say, well, on February 14th, it's going to be this. It's going to do exactly this on February 14th. I can't tell you that. And nobody can tell you that. I know there are some sources out there that have like 90-day forecasts and stuff like that, and they put in a specific amount or, what storm is going to hit that day and what precipitation type is going to be, what the high and lows are going to be. That's all bullshit. It is. There's no way anybody can do that with any kind of accuracy. We can look at temperature patterns as they look right now to forecast ahead for that period. And right now, it looks slightly below average. But there are things that can change that, just like it changed in late January when we did the last Weather Weeklies video late in December. So this changes. So I'm not understanding why how people don't understand the concept of probability, but when they change, it changes from a slightly below average projection in the second half of January to an above average projection, even week to week. I mean, that's not unheard of because you have a lower confidence for that period the longer you go out in time. So I just want to point that out. But we do have a very narrow window for kind of near to slightly below above average temperatures that are going to go through about the middle of the month. After that, we have a warmer stretch, especially most notably between the 18th and 23rd. I think the slightly above average temperatures are going to last through the 26th before we head to near average to end the month, and then maybe slightly below average as we head into February. Listen, I'm not. I understand and can empathize with those that are looking for snow. Some of you dependent on it for income, whether it be, snowplow removal or, whatever it is. Some of you just like snow and miss it and want it. And there's others that can't stand it and are happy to see their heating bills not through the roof right now because energy prices have gone up, and that's not helping either. So there's a lot of different sides to this, and you see this play out on the Facebook page, especially with this back and forth stuff. Well, I'm glad it's warm. I hate the warmth. This back and forth bickering that goes on, especially when you get further into the season. You really haven't had much snow yet. So here's what average snowfall is for January and February. And again, this is going to be predicated on what happens mid-month. I think we finished below average this month because I don't see anything happening mid-month that's going to really save us. And I'll get ahead in this video here. February, this is what normal is on the right-hand column. But again, it's slightly below average now with slightly above average precipitation. Doesn't take a genius to figure out that could lead to more snow. But it's going to depend if that projection works out. Right now we have it slightly below average weeks 2 and 3 of February. If it doesn't materialize, you might not have this, okay? And it's possible because we went, again, the confidence level is lower for the longer probability haul. So here is what we have year to date. And again, it's not much, and we are below average at all of our climate stations. The closest one actually not listed here to actual average is Williamsport with 8.5 inches, and I think we're only about two inches below average. The rest of us are well behind the pace of what normal year to date is, as you can see in the right-hand column. So not much snow here. We will have a weak system coming in Sunday night I'll get to in a second, but why hasn't it been since late December through now? Why has it been warmer? Well, we have an uncooperative Pacific. So you hear a lot of people will say, the Pacific isn't cooperating right now and it's flooding the country with mild air. Well, that's because you have this long Pacific jet extension. It goes all the way from eastern China, all the way straight, without amplification, straight across the ocean, straight into California. California is getting some rain and snow right now, some pretty significant storms. You heard the bomb cyclone talk this week, I'm sure, heading into California. They're going to have another system that's going to become our late week system coming in Monday and Tuesday of this week, right? Actually, Monday. They'll have another shot at rain. That's going to exit the East Coast. And that's going to be our system at the end of the week that we'll talk about here in the video. But this long jet extension is not conducive for any kind of amplifications. You can't get those big ridges and troughs going across the country, and this just floods the country with mild air. Okay, it's not something you want to see in January at your coldest climatological period of the year, because we're entering into that period right now. Okay, next couple of weeks are going to be the coldest highs and lows you'll see on average the entire year. We do have a couple thread the needle events this week. Okay, the first one is this Sunday night snow showers coming in. This is going to be mainly after midnight, going into very early Monday morning. It's a quick shot from west to east. It's not a lot of snow. A lot of this is coating to an inch type stuff across the region as this moves through. Further south, temperatures are going to be a little bit marginal, but even near I-78 where this is targeting, or in between I-78 and I-76 in Pennsylvania, and then across New Jersey as well, it's really not a lot of precipitation involved with this, so you can get a quick 0.5, 0.6, 0.7, 0.8, something like that. So it's a coating to an inch. It's going to be mainly grassy surfaces because it's not really that heavy. You might have some, especially in elevation, you might have some minor roadway accumulations, but this is minor to begin with, so I don't expect this to be a big deal, especially since we've been so mild lately. The roadways are going to be warmer to start with, so it's going to be difficult to get some roadway accumulations out of this, but the grassy surfaces, cars, trees, that kind of thing, it might be a pretty scene when you wake up here on Monday morning and send the kids off to school. So the end of the week system, I want to spend some time on this because this is the setup that we're dealing with the end of the week system, okay? It's overall not really that bad. This is a cutoff upper level low because it is cut off from the jet above it, and you get this bowling trough here where the upper level low exists. But most of these teleconnections are very good, or at least good, that you can work with. You get a slightly negative EPO, a negative AO, positive PNA, which is your ridge in the western United States. AO is your cold air source. So is the EPO, but these are both good. The problem here is this: the negative or the positive NAO. We had a negative NAO in December, the second half of December, to give us all that cold, right? Well, it's positive right now, so there's nothing to block this storm from just continuing out like this very quickly. Okay, so there's nothing to block this and keep this in place and cause this trough to dig further south before coming up like this, which is what a negative NAO would do. And we don't have that right now. It's a positive NAO. So in order to get this storm to produce snow, you need something to help in addition to this. You need some kind of blocking mechanism, and that is a 50-50 low, okay? 50-50 low is this, okay? This is for the European model from 3 days ago, all right? And it shows this low. This is actually associated with along the base of the trough coming in Wednesday, and it shows this low coming up into the Canadian Maritimes and occluding. And you see that right here. It kind of goes like this and spins. That sets up a block for the next system, okay? The trend over the past couple of days over the weekend has been to steer away from a snow event and go toward a rain event. And the reason is because it no longer has this 50-50 low here like it showed just 3 days ago, okay? The GFS last night at 18Z showed a pretty good thump of snow on the front end of this storm before it went over to rain. It did eventually go over to rain, but it had a very good thump of snow on the front end, and that's because the GFS had a 50-50 low. The 50-50 region is right here. It's actually just east of Newfoundland. Okay, that's your 50 degrees north, 50 degree west latitudes. When you hear somebody talking about a 50-50 low, that's what they're talking about. But it can't just do a drive-by through this region. A 50-50 low needs to, come in here and occlude up in this area, do one of these numbers, right? That sets up the block. It's not doing that. It just continues through. So it sets up a temporary block as it comes through. It makes this high pressure linger a little bit longer and not escape to the east and northeast. But you want this high to be over Quebec for our region to get a good snowstorm. And in this case, it is over Newfoundland and Labrador in the eastern regions of Canada. And because of that, we have, at the very least, a change to rain after starting to snow here on the GFS. Now, the GFS has since lost this idea and has gone more toward what the European model has. So here's what the end of the week system the GFS had last night, and it had this thump of snow coming in here because high pressure was able to linger a little bit longer as a result of that 50-50 low being there, okay? It does change to rain, but it was a pretty good thump of snow on the front end of, 3 to 6 inches or something like that. Some areas are even higher than that in the far northern areas. But you had that thump on the front end because high pressure was able to maintain longer. If this high pressure, in this case, as I stop this, if this high pressure was sitting over Quebec instead of being well off to the northeast, we'd have one heck of a snowstorm. This would be a KU storm, okay? A KU storm is named after Paul Cosin and Louis Ussolini, who wrote the what's considered the Bible of, it's actually 2 volumes, the Bible of winter weather forecasting in the Northeast, and it's called Northeast Snowstorms, okay? The Cosin Ussolini, KU, is referring to historic storms that we've had over the past, since 1950 or whatever. I can't remember when we went back to. But they're showing the evolution of those storms in relation to the Northeast United States, what it takes to get a massive storm. They're highlighting specifically historical storms in the Northeast U.S. So if it's a KU storm, that means it's a historical storm. So if you hear that term thrown out there, that's what it means, okay? This had a potential to be a KU storm, but everything has to line up perfectly for this to happen. And like I said, if you have a positive NAO right here, you need a 50-50 low right here, and there is none. There is none. The trend over the past couple of days has been to get rid of a 50-50 low in this region. If there's no block, this has no reason to do. There's nothing to draw on cold air. There's no high pressure locked in here over Quebec instead of over here, right? That difference, it makes a difference with your cold air source, okay? And in this case, it's not cold enough to snow in our region, okay? And here's a look at the European model, or actually the GFS currently. I got a big question mark next to that because there's nothing here, right? So this is unabated moving through. And this is what we have on the European model and GFS. They're both in agreement now. You might have some snow initially across New England where it's colder, but this for us is primarily a rainmaker. Now it does, as after it passes by, change over to snow at the tail end. I wouldn't bank on that, but it has it, so whatever. But this is primarily a rain system that's going to be coming in at the end of the week, and this is looking at generally the Friday, Saturday time frame of this upcoming week. Can this change yet? Maybe a little bit. I don't see this all of a sudden miraculously bringing back a 50-50 low that hasn't been there for the past couple of days, and everything is an agreement that it's not going to be there. So because of that, I don't think it's going to be a snowstorm now, okay? On Friday, there were still some questions with the long range, so when I had this chart put out, and it has here as a winter storm signal for this in the 13th or 15th time frame, it's because there was uncertainty yet, okay? We now know that this is probably not going to be a winter storm. This is going to be a rainstorm. And it's unfortunate. Again, I feel bad for the snow lovers that really want this. I don't have any skin in the game. I don't care. I mean, it helps me a little bit with ad revenue on the website when we have storms and, more people are visiting the website, you get more money, that kind of thing. But that's it. I really can't say I want this because I'm a homeowner. I like the temperatures a little milder, so we're not dealing with extremes and higher bills, and I don't have to remove snow if it's not there, right? Okay, so I'm getting older. I'm a homeowner, like many of you, and I have a different opinion on that. Would I like to see some snow? Yeah, sure. I'll enjoy what's going to happen on Sunday night and Monday morning. I'll wake up, it'll look nice, but I don't have to remove that most likely. According to Winch, probably don't have to remove, okay? It's going to melt on its own and won't stick on the pavement anyway. Now, this was a thread the needle event because the pattern before and after are not something that's very good for winter. Here's the temperature pattern after mid-January. We're going right back into the warmth, most notably between the 18th and 23rd of this month. Okay, I think that period is going to be the most above average during that stretch. Then you have a couple days. This is going to stop here at the 24th. Actually, the evening of the 23rd, and it runs out of range, but it's still slightly above average 23rd, 24th, 25th, 26th, right? Until this finally moderates a little bit back, or it goes back to near average, I think, to the end of the month of January. Okay, the GFS extended that ran last night shows that same warmth initially. It does have it backing off, and you can see that here. But it backs off the near average here at the end of the month, and then February maybe near to slightly below average is not as enthusiastic as the Euro Weeklies are going into February. And February, again, that's a big question mark, whether it's going to be slightly below average in weeks 2 and 3, like the European model suggests. Here starts off near to slightly below average week 1, and then weeks 2 and 3 are slightly below on the Euro Weeklies. So it's possible that this could change, but right now, this is where we're using data that I'm able to access right now for that range, and that's as far as I can go. And it does have the ability to change. This is why these models run twice a week. This is why we do the long range every single week, and I do these videos every single week. Things change. It's probability. Right now, looking at it, it looks like it is going to get colder in February. You'll have some snow chances, but can that change? Sure. And if it doesn't, winter's going to be over, okay? I mean, we're not going to have a very good winter, and, January's done. It really is. You really have no, aside from this Sunday night stuff, I mean, there's really not much here to look forward to as far as storm signals until we get into a more favorable pattern. And it's not going to be for this month, that's for sure. Okay. One of the things that have been thrown out there was the Madden-Julian Oscillation, how it was going to phase 8, 1, and 2, which are favorable for colder temperatures that could produce snow, right? Well, the last couple of days, the propagation to phase 8, right now it's in the circle of death, which is this middle circle right here. Okay, that's where the tropical forcing along the equatorial regions just north of there, the tropical convergence zone, has no effect on the pattern, or very little. Okay, so it's in the circle of death right now, right about here. It was expected to go into phase 8, 1, and 2, maybe 3, before collapsing back into the circle of death. Well, it has most of that progression correct still. It doesn't have any. GFS Extended has nothing in phase 8 now. The European model has it in there for 2 days, which really isn't going to do much. It is very weak anyway. The majority of this is going through phase 1 and then an extended period in phase 2 before it goes into phase 3. Okay. Now, this is going to be, depending on what our background state is, which right now it's a very weak La Nina. It's negative 0.6 ONI thereabout on average. And I'll get to that in a second here. Depending on the background state we're dealing with, whether it's a weak La Nina or at the end of the month, which I think it has a chance to be ENSO neutral by the end of this month, will determine what we're going to be dealing with as far as temperature patterns across the United States. Here's what the phase 8 would have looked like. This is what everybody got excited. Oh, phase 8's coming. Well, if phase 8 did materialize, which it doesn't look like it's going to, you would have had a cold pattern across the Eastern United States. It's a cold and stormy pattern in January in a weak La Nina. Alas, it doesn't look like it's going to, be in phase 8 at all or very long. Okay, so we look ahead to phase 1. Phase 1 in a weak La Nina looks like this. Still cold over the Northeast United States, not quite as stormy for our pattern, but you have to remember this is, when we go to phase 1, it is 17th, 18th, 19th. That doesn't help you till the end of this month because there's a lag time of 7 to 10 days for this phase to affect our sensible pattern here in the Eastern United States. It takes 7 to 10 days for us to feel the effects of that. So this is not an immediate thing. It doesn't mean on the 17th, 18th, 19th it's going to be colder, as shown here. It means it's going to take 7 to 10 days for that pattern to take effect after that is reached, if that makes sense. So when we go to phase 2, this is the 23rd, 24th, 25th, all the way through the 29th. Well, that's going to affect February. So we have to look at what is a February look for phase 2, and you got a southeast ridge influence coming back in. If we do reach ENSO neutral at the end of the month and we're no longer in a weak La Nina, which is possible, the southeast ridge will go away. It'll flatten, and you get at least marginally cold temperatures here, which is what we're expecting for the end of the month. If we reach phase 2 at the end of the month, that's what we're going to have. Okay, if La Nina holds on longer, we could have a southeast ridge influence to end this month, which is a continuation of warmer air, and that would go into early February. These are the uncertainties, and we don't know how this is going to propagate exactly. So since we don't know that answer, we're just using what we have available to us right now and trying to project forward. Right now it looks colder. That can change though if this lingers a little bit longer, okay, which is a weak La Nina, because at an ENSO neutral this looks a lot better. In phase 3, which would be in February now, where I have to go to February, use neutral ENSO here because I'm pretty confident that by February we're going to be in an ENSO neutral at that point. So we should have this is a colder overrunning pattern where you get some overrunning gradient type storms here in the month of February in an ENSO neutral in phase 3. And we do have that, both of them having going through phase 3 before collapsing into the circle of death after the first couple days of February. So there's a lot to unpack there. I know there's a lot of data dump there, but I'm just trying to show you the uncertainties of everything going forward. Can this be a snowless winter, or generally snowless? I know some people had some snow. Yes, it can. It certainly can. This is not impossible for that to happen, but we're still hanging our hats here on February and maybe March to still produce something. I'll tell you what, though, and I'm not trying to give anybody any false hope. I really am not. Okay, but you're going to hear a lot of terms thrown out there to confuse people, like sudden stratospheric warming and polar vortex. You're hearing it already, right? Just forget about that nonsense, okay? If I'm not talking about here in the Weather Weeklies video or mentioning it in the long-range outlooks I'll do on Friday, it's just a bunch of hype, okay? Is there a possibility you could have a sudden stratospheric warming event in early February? Yeah, there's a possibility. Is it a guarantee? Absolutely not, okay? But this is what weenies do when they start clinging on to something or clinging on to false hope to try to confuse the peasants, so to speak, right? This is not happening right anytime soon. There's nothing to worry about with that regard. That could set up a colder, later February and March period. That's getting way out there. I don't want to speculate about that right now. I want to focus on the background state, which is our La Nina situation right now. Right now, it's hanging on as a very weak La Nina and west-based, because the lowest temperatures are actually out here in the central regions as opposed to the eastern regions. The eastern regions are almost near neutral, near the Peruvian coast. So here's what we have. I have to use this as a change for since the last time I did the video 3 weeks ago. And we have definitely warmed during that period, okay? It's still, if you take a positive average of these 4 regions, it's still about negative 0.6 degrees Celsius, which is technically a weak La Nina. So we're heading in the direction of ENSO neutral, and I do think we're going to hit that either late this month or early February, and so does the CPC. CPC, the red line here in the middle, indicates where the ONI index, it actually has it going to, but once it gets above this 0.5 threshold, which is right here, you are in an ENSO neutral. Okay, we're very close. We're at negative 0.6, which is right here. Okay, once we get into this period, the January, February, March period, it has it in an ENSO neutral. I have to agree with that. I've been saying that since we started doing this in November, that we would have I've expected a transition and a warming in December and early January. By the end of January, we'd be in ENSO neutral. I'm still holding on to that. And that could change the pattern downstream, like I've been talking about too. I mean, that could change our pattern heading into the latter part of winter. So maybe you make up for it at the end, maybe you don't, okay? It's a possibility you could have a very dry or very snowless stretch here in February, March too, or you could have a late season surge. We've had years that it's done that, okay, especially in the past decade. So it's very possible. We're going to monitor that going forward, but I do expect an ENSO neutral winter pattern to take shape once we get in. Now, this is a paintbrush, by the way, just like the La Nina paintbrush that NOAA puts out. This is what a paintbrush ENSO neutral winter pattern is. It doesn't mean it's going to be like this entire time. It doesn't mean ENSO neutral is going to save the day. It can, and it can help you late in winter to make up for some lost time. But we're still below. We have some work to do, okay? And it doesn't look good for the rest of the month. This month, we know that. So to summarize, we're monitoring a quick-moving weak low that will bring snow showers to parts of the region overnight tonight into very early Monday morning with very minor accumulations of snow. We have sent alerts for that. My pocket meteorologist text alert customers, we do not have a map for it. We don't make maps for quoting to an inch stuff, so you won't see anything on weather alerts. Watching a late week system closely for any possible changes, most notably with a possible 50-50 low development or not. Or not is probably more likely. We're going to get mostly, if not entirely, a rain system out of that. Excuse me, from that cutoff low. And then we are turning milder past mid-month. This should say through week 4. It's got, here we go. Milder past mid-month through week 4, okay? At some point toward the end of the very tail end of January, we should head closer to neutral, and then maybe slightly below average in February, but that's still in question. We're going to examine that in the coming weeks ahead, but right now that's what we have for you for this edition of Weather Weeklies for Sunday, January 8th. Take care.